For country music legend George Strait, music isn't everything. He was about to quit his career to focus on his wife, Norma Strait. Norma's been a big part of George's career and is often the quiet force of reason and calm. She has always been there for him and even appeared in the music video for his song Código. Now George has to be there for Norma because the memories of a shared loss weigh heavy on her heart. George Strait and his wife met when he was in high school. They saw each other around school, but they weren't talking yet. Maybe George wasn't saying anything because he was busy and couldn't commit. His father, John Byron Strait Sr., was a junior high school math teacher who owned a 200-acre cattle ranch outside of Big Wells, Texas. During the summer, George worked every day on the ranch and enjoyed it, but one day he asked Norma out on a date because he thought she was beautiful. After that one date, he didn't see her for a long time. George had become distracted by the motions of life, but was there another reason he wasn't ready to commit to Norma? When he was in the 4th grade, his parents got divorced, and his sister Pensy moved in with his mother. He and his brother John Buddy Jr. stayed with their father, and George and his brother Buddy continued to work on their father's farm. But George felt like something was missing in their relationship. Even though he didn't see Norma again, he thought about her, so he went back to her and they started dating while they were both in Peaceville High School. Speaking of high school, George wasn't just interested in romance, he also loved working on the ranch and being a cowboy roper. There was something else that caught his attention: music. George loved music and wanted to be a musician. Despite becoming famous as a country musician, his first love was rock music. Like many young Americans at the time, George was also into the British invasion-era rock craze. When he was in Peel High School, he joined a band called the Stoics, who got most of their ideas from the Beatles and other British artists. During this time, the British invasion-era rock gained a lot of fans. George's choice of genre was interesting because, even though country music was popular in Texas, he wasn't into it at all. He preferred Farmer's Report instead. Instead, he went where rock and roll music took him and played for a number of other bands. But something changed when George finally saw a live performance of country music. That performance made him want to see more live country music performances, and that's when his music taste changed. He caught the country music bug and started to regularly listen to artists like Frank Sinatra, Hank Thompson, Lefty Frizzle, Merle Haggard, George Jones, Bob Wills, and Hank Williams. Finally, George had the choice of genre. George seemed to be on the path to becoming a professional musician, but he didn't have everything he needed yet. After his first relationship with Norma, he was ready to take things to the next level. What he did next could be seen as romantic, crazy, or a mix of the two. He eloped with Norma to Mexico after they graduated from high school and got married there on December 4th, 1971. It was them against the world, and George loved the odds. Norma went back to Peel and got married in a church. Their union seemed like it came straight out of a romance novel, but the tragedy that followed was something that even the coldest-hearted author wouldn't want to write. The loss that would break Norma and George was coming, but for now they were happy with their peaceful life. George loved more than just his wife, he loved country music and cowboy roping, and when it was time for him to join the Army in 1971, he did so without fear. George wanted to serve his country and do his part, so he became an infantryman and was sent to Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. While he was there, Norma joined him, and the two started to live together. On October 6, 1972, their daughter Jennifer was born, and George now had everything he ever wanted. Well, not everything, but he quickly fixed that except for one thing: to perform. When the chance came up, George jumped at it with both feet. He auditioned for a show, an Army-sponsored country music band called Rambling Country. They played both on and off bass. George and Norma's life was going well, but nothing could have prepared them for the tragedy that was about to happen. George retired as a corporal in 1975 and went straight to Texas State University to study agriculture. This wasn't a surprising choice since he had worked on a ranch his whole life. But why didn't he study music instead? While he wasn't there studying music, he saw a flyer that a country band called Stony Ridge put up ads on campus looking for a new lead singer. Strait immediately auditioned and joined the band. He became such an important part of the group that he changed their name to the Ace in the whole band. The band played all over Texas, mostly in honky-tonks and bars, and soon they became popular in the area, opening for national acts like the Texas Playboys and Asleep at the Wheel. As their regional fame grew, an independent record label in Houston called D-Record offered the band the chance to. Recording singles was a great chance for them, and Strait wrote the songs. Unfortunately, the songs didn't do well, and Strait was getting angry. Norma kept telling him to keep going, so Strait kept working on his dad's cattle ranch during the day to make money for his family. With the songs they recorded with Dord failing, George lost connections in the recording industry, but he and his band kept performing with incredible passion, and that passion led them to Irvie. Woy became friends with George and managed one of the bars where George's band played. Woy had worked for major label MCA Records. Woolsey started to talk to the people he knew about George and his band. These people loved George and his band, but they weren't sure that his musical style would appeal to the wider market. What was it about George's style that made them say no? Watch to find out. George felt defeated, but he didn't give up. He picked himself up and started to try harder. George traveled too. He moved to Nashville to try to make it as a musician, but nothing worked out. He tried every studio and was turned down, which hurt his confidence. Soon George was done. He had to support his family, and if music wasn't the way, he would do something else. In the middle of his career setbacks, he got an offer to design cattle pens for a ranch. It was a job he knew he had to do, but he wasn't excited about it. He told his band that he was leaving. His hopes of becoming a famous musician were over. Norma wasn't happy. She knew her husband wasn't passionate about making cattle pens, and she didn't want to be the reason he quit music, so she called him in for a heart-to-heart and asked him to give music another chance for one more year. George didn't want to break Norma's heart. He loved her too much to do that, so he agreed to do music for another year. It was lucky for him that he listened to her. In 1981, MCA signed George to a recording contract, but there was a catch. George had only one chance with them. If his song did well, they might think about making an album. That one chance was all George needed, and he took his band with him. George released Unwound, his first single for MCA Records, and it did amazingly well. It reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart, and that was enough to make an album. George released his first album, Strait Country, and he became the hottest new artist on. People thought George's sound was different from the pop-influenced country music that was popular at the time. They saw it as the new traditional country style. They liked how it went with his real cowboy image and thought it brought country music back to its roots. With that album, George became one of the biggest stars in the business, but even the biggest stars get old. The success of his first album and single weren't the only good things that happened. In 1981, George's wife Norma gave birth to their second child, a son named George Bubba Strait Jr. In 1982, George had more success with the song Full-Heartedly, which became his first #1 single. He was able to combine all of his interests into one thing. The famous country musician Eddie Rabbitt usually headlined the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, but in 1983 he got sick and George had to fill in for him. This was another step forward in George's career, and it seemed like everything he touched grew. Norma gave up a career so she could be with the kids all the time because her husband was going to be gone most of the time, and George had 5 projects that went straight to the top of the Billboard charts from 1983 to 1984. He was ready to quit music around 1981, but he won the Country Music Award for Top Male Vocalist, and his projects kept going to the top of the charts as his career grew. His wife continued to provide stability at home because her husband was going to be gone most of the time. Her children did well because she took care of them and her family. Strait even won the Country Music Award for Top Male Vocalist again, which was a huge honor for him, but something he would give up to undo the tragedy that broke his wife and him. Norma did everything she could to keep an eye on her kids. When her first child, Jessica, turned 13, she had a lot of friends, and Norma and her husband tried to keep track of who her friends were and who she liked. So when she wanted to go out with her friends at age 13, her parents didn't see a problem. They thought their daughter needed to feel some independence. Unfortunately, that night in 1986 would be the last time they would see their daughter alive. She was riding in the front seat of the car she was in when she went out and wasn't wearing her seatbelt. The driver, Gregory Wilson Allen, was going too fast and couldn't handle the turn. Because he was going too fast, the car flipped over, and because Jennifer wasn't wearing her seatbelt, she was partially thrown out of the car when it landed on its side, crushing her and killing her instantly. The driver was charged with a class of misdemeanor for vehicular homicide, but the damage had already been done. Jennifer wouldn't be coming back. Her death showed how important it is to listen to and follow traffic rules. It also showed how vulnerable George and his wife were. George had to make a decision. He stopped doing interviews and avoided any public discussion that could lead to him talking about how the death of his daughter affected him and Norma. Norma felt like she had failed in her duty and needed a way to deal with her grief, so in 1986 she and George started the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation. Through the foundation, Norma hoped to find normalcy and stop what happened to her daughter from happening again. The number of nominations he received for the Country Music Awards and the Academy of Country Music Awards made him the most nominated artist for those 2 awards. He went on to win the Country Music Award Entertainer of the Year in 1989 and 1990, as well as the ACM Entertainer of the Year Award in 1990. He also won another CMA award in 2013 and another ACM Entertainer of the Year award in 2014. With these two wins, George is currently the most decorated country musician in history. No other musician has sold as many records as George has so far. He has sold over 20 million records around the world, making him one of the most successful and best-selling music artists of all time. He has 33 albums that are certified platinum or gold, and he has been named the 12th best-selling album recording artist in the United States, having sold over 70 million records there. For all of his hard work, he will be inducted into the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2025. We can only wonder what took so long. Even though he was inducted, George and his wife still feel the pain of their daughter's death. They don't talk about it. The one time they did talk about it, they didn't regret losing her. Instead, they were thankful they had 13 years to spend with her. This showed how mentally strong the couple is. They can find reasons to be thankful even when things are bad.